So, Adrian, let's have a listen to some sample student answers for the speaking test. This person has answered 7 questions, 3 questions in part 1, 1 question in part 2, and 3 questions in part 3. And we might dip in and out, and we may not answer all of them, we may not look at all of them, but what we do is take a broad look at this student, see how they're doing well, see how they could improve. Does that sound good for you?
Yeah, great. Let's do it.
Fabulous. Right, so the first question on the screen that you will see is, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? What do you enjoy doing in your free time? Let's see how this student answers this question.
When I get my free time, I love to take care of my garden. In my free time, I go to nursery and buy some new green plants and put them on my tiny little balcony. And I love to take care of them. And love to water, give some water them every day.
Alrighty, what do you think about this person's answer?
I think the answer is genuine, and that's a great start. So it's an original answer. I can tell that it's not a template. They're not repeating something that they've practiced 100 times or that they've read online, because it said that it'll get them a band 9. So it's original, and that is good. I would score.
I'll just jump in there. My main critique of this one is actually fluency. So she speaks probably just a little bit too slowly if she wanted to reach a band 8. She might reach a band 7 here in terms of the speed of her speech, but there were just a few too many kind of spaces between some of her ideas, and they didn't flow kind of enough together as I would like to hear for a band 8.
There's definitely no way this would get a band 8. Perhaps I would be a little bit even more critical. I would have scored it closer to a band 6. Now, this is the reality of IELTS writing and speaking, as it is subjective. One examiner might say 6, the other might say 7. We're going to be more or less within half a band, maximum 1 band score apart. But of course, we have to consider that we just heard 1 question so far. So now, you're right. I agree with you, Chris. The fluency is lacking. Another part of the fluency where there's a lack of fluency is the repetition. So she repeats the same term several times to buy herself some time to think of the English for the following idea. So the one that I caught that she repeated several times was in my free time. So it's important to avoid that kind of repetition. Also, my critique of this response, what I always tell students is think of the format of answer, explain, example. And here she gives 2 answers to the question, but doesn't really explain herself. So why does she like gardening? Because she enjoys the beautiful flowers on her balcony. So it's important not to go off topic, but at the same time, it's important to give reasoning to answers. And this
really
I thought
useful.
was lacking. Yeah.
Good points. She does repeat the word free time a number of times, and the pronunciation of time as well was a little bit off. The diphthong, if you're interested in phonetics, if you're interested in learning about pronunciation, she actually says tam rather than I. The y at the end, and an examiner would probably pick her up on that pronunciation feature, and because it's a repeated feature, probably she would go down to a 6 or a 7 for pronunciation in that respect. So it's the free time rather than free time, the y sound, which is really quite an important feature of the vowel there. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, which was a great feature actually, she used a collocation, and she used tiny little garden. Now, for people who are learning English, you might think tiny and little would be kind of a repetition of an idea, but it is absolutely normal for native speakers to say, I had a tiny little amount of food. And using those 2 words together is not necessarily a bad thing. And you would find that if you were writing something, you wouldn't write that. But when you're saying something, it is actually quite a good feature of her vocabulary, her lexical resource. So I was impressed by her in that.
I agree 100%. I thought that was one of the strongest parts of her speaking was her lexical resource. I picked up on that tiny little balcony as well. This is creating what is, of course, we call emphasis in the speaking. And controlling emphasis is one of the key aspects of higher level communicators using the English language. So band 7, 8, 9, they don't just simply express themselves, but they control the emphasis they place on certain ideas in their speaking.
Fabulous. Let's go on to another question in part 1, which was, do you have free time at the weekend or during the week? Do you have free time at the weekend or during the week?
Yes, I do have free time at my weekend. Normally, Friday is the weekend in our country, and on Friday, I spend all time for me, for take care of my skin, like my hair. I try to do pedicure, manicure. Sometimes I go to outside for hanging out with friends.
Okay, Adrian. So, question, what do you think about this one?
So she gives a complete answer. So oftentimes I get asked the question, like, how much is enough for an answer to a question? And I would say what she has given as an answer is roughly the right amount. Again, there's a bit of redundancy. It's a similar strength, weakness as the previous, with lack of fluency once again, and good vocabulary. So she uses words like pedicure, manicure, has quite a nice diversity of vocabulary. In this response, I picked up a bit more for grammar as well. So she makes some key grammatical mistakes, especially with verb tense. And verb tense mistakes tend to impact both the coherence and the grammar scores negatively. So indeed, I agree with Chris that in some ways she does present band 7, especially lexical resource, but in other marking criteria, in this case, like grammar, it would be closer to a 6.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of times she incorrectly used the verb after the noun. I don't remember what exactly she said, after the preposition, forgive me. She said for, do, or I don't remember exactly, but she didn't say the gerund form for interviewing or for doing, and it would be the ing form that she might need to have after that. And again, grammar, yes, I would be deducting marks because it was consistent mistakes throughout. So yeah, again, probably about a band 6 to 7 for grammar, but the frequency of mistakes is a bit problematic here for me. Great, so let's have a listen to her part 2 answer, which is talk about an activity you enjoy doing in your free time. So this topic is about free time. Talk about an activity you enjoy doing in your free time. Let's listen to her response, and feel free, guys, if you notice any comments or any ideas that are great in this speaking, put them in the comments, and if you notice any mistakes, also leave them so that other students can kind of spot those as well. Let's go.
Okay, as I told before that, I like gardening. I like growing plants and vegetables in my small balcony, and in my free time, I love to spend my time there with my 6-year-old baby boy, and on my every weekend I spend sometimes to take care of them. I mean the plants. I cut the dry leaves and branches by shears, and sometimes every day my boy give water by his own made water can.
I'm going to interrupt there, and we'll just stop and have a discussion about what she's doing well and what she could improve. So again, you will find this throughout the test. It's interesting that an examiner has a really good idea of your level probably by the end of part 1. And part 2 is an opportunity for you to show that you have good fluency and ability to sustain your speech. She can sustain her speech here, but it is a little bit slow, I feel, and she could improve her fluency mark because of that. She still has these great language lexical items. She tries to use the word shears. Did you notice that, Adrian?
I did, yeah. And even the word before shears, she awkwardly pronounced a word there as well, where I had to think twice to recognize what word she was actually using. So you're right, yeah, shears was awkward. And the word before that, it doesn't come to me what that was, but I'm sure when the viewers listen, they'll catch that other word. And when words are mispronounced or poorly pronounced back to back, so one after the other, that can be even more problematic because that can really start to impact the overall coherence of what is being said.
That's right, and it's going to affect both the fluency mark and the pronunciation mark, because there's something in language called strain. Maybe the students know about it. When you strain, it means that you have to listen hard to get what they're saying. And I've worked with people for 20 years who are learning English, and I knew that she was trying to go for the word shears, and 98% of native speakers probably wouldn't have picked that up. And examiners are really attuned, they're really skilled at listening for those kind of really subtle mistakes. The student is trying really hard, so they get their lexical resource mark, but they are impacted by their pronunciation.
And Chris, you just reminded me what that other word was by speaking. And like you said, examiners pick it up. They do pick up even the small missing articles, or the word that she used just before shears, which she pronounced, I think, something like sears. The word before that was braces. When she was trying to say branches. So I believe she tried to say that she was pruning branches, but she said braces. And I had to fill it in and realize it was, I think she's referring to branches.
Gotcha. And this would be a pronunciation feature of the hard sound. And there are some countries where their native language don't have these hard sounds. A good one which I know about is Nepalese. Nepalese really struggle with the sh and the ch sounds. These two really hard sounds. For example, shears and branches. So this person needs to work on these hard syllable sounds. Great feedback there. And she also struggled with the word vegetables. Again, this ch sound that's hidden in there. Yeah. And I don't want to labour the point of pronunciation, but it can have a knock-on impact of fluency, coherence. Both of those together will be impacted by pronunciation. Did you notice she had the same grammar mistakes throughout as well?
I did, yeah. I did notice the grammar mistakes, and right at the very beginning, examiners are listening for natural language, of course, and especially at the higher levels, band 7 to 9, they're really listening for natural language. She started her response by saying, "as I told before." A native speaker or natural English would not use that kind of a leading expression. She should have said something like, "as I have said before," or "as I had previously mentioned." But "as I told before" is awkward.
Yeah, you can say as I told you before. You could say that, but not told before. You have to put the object in there, the person who you're speaking to. As I told you before, and that would be a good example. But as you said, she was incorrect when she said as I told before. Great feedback, and I hope this will give students this more granular. We're looking at the details now, and we're not doing it to be critical. We're not doing it to focus on one particular area, because I think the student has lots of good features. The problem is IELTS is a standardized test, and we are trained to listen to those mistakes, not because we are super critical or hypercritical. It's because we want to give everybody the same opportunity. So we mark it as equally as possible. And both Adrian and I can hear the language that he's using, and I totally agree. She's sitting somewhere between probably a band 6 to a 6.5 in her speech. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think we'll get an even clearer idea of that when we get into some part 3 questions as well.
Exactly. And that leads us on to part 3. So we'll have a listen to a question. You'll see it on the screen now, which is, do people have more or less free time than they did in the past? Do people have more or less free time than they did in the past?
It's becoming more competitive day by day, and I would like to say nowadays people have less free time than before, because everybody tries to be success in their life, in every stage of people. Okay.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this, Adrian?
So I would say that, as I have predicted, and of course, this is experience. So dealing with IELTS for more than 10 years intimately, for many, many hours a day, it's my passion. So yes, this part 3, I would, as objectively as possible, say that it's validating a band 6 level. She's clearly having a bit more difficulty with this in-depth question in relation to free time. It's affecting her fluency even more. So she's really trying to buy time with a leading expression to gather her thoughts, to gather the language that she needs to answer the question. And she's struggling with it a bit. I'm not picking up a clear answer. I'm not picking up any sort of clear explanation. There's a hint of an explanation that people lead busier lives these days than they did in the past, but it's unclear. As an examiner, when I have to put a lot of my own thoughts behind the response to make sense of it, then it becomes problematic, and then the score is hovering at a band 6 or lower at that point.
Yeah, very true, very true. Yep, she introduces the concept that society is becoming more competitive. She tries to give some substance to her answer, but then it kind of falls off. She makes some mistakes like to be success. It should be to be successful, because successful would be an adjective. So that would be a grammar mistake. Phrases like it's becoming day by day. This is clearly a template. She's learned that from somewhere on the internet, because most native speakers wouldn't say something is becoming day by day in this context. Competitiveness is not day by day. However, she does, and I'm going to pick out some positive points. She contracted her answer and she used the word cause. Now, lots of people will say, Chris, this is an academic exam. You shouldn't be using contractions. Actually, IELTS speaking is not an academic, there's no academic benchmark. IELTS speaking is for you to speak naturally. So if you feel comfortable using the word cause in the middle of a sentence, that is something that native speakers would use. So you are permitted to use it. I would use it sparingly, don't use it all the time. But if you're using it in a quick, fast sentence, it shows the examiner that you have an understanding of how native speakers contract words and use them naturally.
I agree. And another positive point on that, so where I'm not coming across as just criticizing the negative points, and you're right, Chris, there are definitely some aspects which she does well. Another one that I picked up which she does well, and it's an interesting one because there are myths around this also, is self-correction. So she actually self-corrects in one part where she replaces the auxiliary verb has with have. And the correction is appropriate. And self-correction is an element of communication that is done by native speakers. So native speakers, and I'm sure you've heard Chris and I make some mistakes in our communication during this interview as well, but we've stopped and we've corrected ourselves. That's natural in language. So if and when you catch yourself making a mistake in your speaking response and you're able to correct it, that is good. You shouldn't just skip over it and try to save fluency or feel that it's awkward if you correct. You should correct, and she does that well.
I totally agree. Wow, we've we've listened to this person, we've picked out all her areas of great achievement, and also we've identified some of the ways that she could boost her score. And this kind of summarizes what we've been talking about all through this video, which is the idea of getting correction, getting people who understand the exam to make sure that they have an ear or they're able to cast their eye over your writing, and this will save you time. It will provide you a much more valuable way for you to improve your score. And before we head off, before we log off, is there anything else you want to share, Adrian, with our viewers? Maybe tell them about what we're planning to do in the next class, or maybe share something about your life.
Sure, yeah. So I think it's an appropriate time to mention that we're looking forward to having Chris on our channel as well, where we will dig further into some of the common myths in IELTS during the study phase of the IELTS exam, where learners are actually preparing, and then we'll look at some of the myths maybe around what happens on exam day. So we'll be discussing these in more detail, and we're really excited to have Chris and his team join us for that interview on our channel, so that we can provide students with more valuable content. I think as a closing kind of note or a closing mention, a take-home message, as I call it, at the end of task 2 essays, at the end of the conclusion, is that don't rush. Find quality materials. IELTS does have a lot of mystery around it, a lot of unknowns around it. So take your time and really do the research, because having a strong foundation going into IELTS, as Chris has mentioned multiple times, will not only save lots of money, lots of stress, but will, of course, eventually lead you to greater success. So amazing feedback, amazing advice. I truly hope that I see you guys, not only me, I want to see you guys on the AE Help YouTube page, watching the second installment of this video, where Adrian says we're going to talk more about myths. If you did enjoy this video, if you thought there were things that you loved and you want to see more of, if you think there are things that were boring, please tell us. We are very open to feedback. We want to hear as much as possible about your goals. We want to know what you want, because we will respond to you. And sometimes we don't know everything. We will take feedback from you guys. If you thought it was useful, please tell us in the comments below. Last but not least, I want to say a big thank you to Adrian. He has taken this time out of his day to come and join us today. It was truly enjoyable for me. I learned things as well. I hope the students did. In fact, I know the students did. So, Adrian, for you, it's good night. For me, it's good day. I hope you take care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy and strong, everyone. Thank you. Bye, Chris.